Hello. I suggest you crochet a beautiful openwork pattern of 2 shades of yarn. I will knit from fine cotton yarn in 50 grams 220 meters, and I have a thin hook of 125 millimeters. We perform the first loop and tie a chain of 20 air loops. The first loop, the second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, ninth, 10th, 11th, 12th, 13th, 14th, 15th, 16th, 17th, 18th, 19th and 20th air loop. Now we close the resulting chain into a ring. We have a semicircle. Insert the hook into the very first air loop and stretch the working loop through this first loop. At the same time, the tail is conveniently bent and remains in the middle of the next row. Next, we perform 3 air loops to move to the next row. 1, 2, 3, then 1 cape on the hook, and into the resulting ring we will tie 36 columns with 1 cape. The first column, then the second column, the third, the fourth, the fifth, so we will tie 36 columns with 1 cape in a circle. "36 columns with 1 cape were tied into a ring. Now let's make a connecting column. Where the very first column with 1 cape was knitted, we introduce a hook from above, grab the loop and stretch this loop through the main loop. Then we will tie the next row. We perform 4 air loops, we skip 1 loop of the base. We tie a column without a cape into the next one. And so we'll tie the whole row. For air loops, we skip 1 loop of the base. We tie a column without a cape into the next one. Tied in a circle. There should be 18 arches in total. At the end, 4 air loops were also made for the last arch. Now we will tie the connecting column. We insert the hook into the base of the first air chain, grab the loop and pull this loop through the main loop. We pull out this loop and cut off the thread. Now you need to tuck in the tails. You can do this with a needle. We pull the tail on the wrong side, and from the wrong side we hide the tails in columns with 1 cape. Next, we will knit with yarn of a different color. We perform the first loop and tie a chain of 20 air loops. The first loop, the second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th, 13th, 14th, 15th, 16th, 17th, 18th, 19th and 20th air loop. Now this chain must be closed into a ring, but this chain must pass through the first ring, so we put a tail in the middle. Look so that the air chain does not twist along the axis. Insert the hook into the very first air loop and stretch the working loop through this loop. The ring closed. The tail is also conveniently bent and remains in the middle of the next row. Now we will tie this ring as well as the previous one. First, we will perform 3 air loops of lifting to the next row, then 1 cape on the hook, and into the resulting ring we will tie 36 columns with 1 cape. The first column with 1 cape, the second column, the third, the fourth, the fifth, tying around the columns, scroll the ring along the axis. In this way, 36 columns with 1 cape were tied into a ring. Turning the ring on the axis. Now we will tie the connecting column. Above the first column, we introduce a hook, grab the working loop and pull it through the main loop. Then we will tie small arches. We collect 4 air loops, we skip 1 loop of the base, we tie a column without a cape into the next one. Once again, for air loops, we skip 1 loop of the base, we tie a column without a cape into the next one. They tied the arches in this way around the circle. In total there should be 18 arches. It remains to tie the last 18th arch, but the working loop should remain on its top. Therefore, we perform 2 air loops, 1 cape on the hook, and at the base of the first air chain we tie a column with 1 cape. The result was 18 arches. Now let's connect the 2 rings together. We start the hook under the white arch, we tie the column without a cape. Now we will tie a chain of 5 air loops. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. In the next arch, starting the hook, we tie a column without a cape. So, in a circle, a chain of 5 air loops, a column without a cape, tied the arches in a circle in this way, having completed 12 arches in total. Now, tying the 13th arch, we will connect the 2 motifs together. We will perform a column without a cape. First, we start the hook in 1 motif in the arch, then in the next arch on another motif and tie the column without a cape. Thereby connecting the 2 motifs together. Then we will tie the same arches around the circle. 5 air loops, a column without a cape into the next arch, tied the arches on this side in a circle. Now it remains to tie the last arch, where they knitted a column without a cape, connecting the 2 motifs together. We get a hook under this column and also tie a column without a cape from above. We perform an air loop, release the working loop and cut the thread. Now it remains to tuck in the tails. As a result, this is a wonderful two-tone motif. This is the front side of this motif, this is the wrong side. These motifs look very nice if you combine them together. It turns out a beautiful openwork two-tone lace. This is how the front side of this lace looks like. This is what the wrong side looks like. These motifs are connected to each other in the process of knitting the last row. Tying the last row, we connect these arches. Here I have completed 5 arches of 5 air loops, and tying the next 6th arch, I will connect it with a ready-made motif. We will perform the 6th arch in half, tying 3 air loops. First loop, second and third air loop. Now we release the working loop, insert the hook into the 5th arch, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Insert the hook into this 5th arch, stretch the working loop under the bottom, perform 2 more air loops and return to knitting this motif, tying a small column without a cape into the next arch, then 3 air loops. We release the working loop, insert the hook into the next arch, stretch the working loop, perform 2 air loops, a column without a cape into the next arch and once again connect. 3 air loops for the 3rd time, stretch through the finished motif, perform 2 air loops and a column without a cape into the next arch. Next, we knit the basics of this motif, which was knitted by performing 5 air loops, a column without a cape in the next arch, 5 air loops, a column without a cape in the next arch. We tie 5 arches on this motif from this side. Then after the 5th arch we connect the 2 motifs together with a column without a cape. As a result, connecting these motifs together, it turns out that such a beautiful, wonderful openwork lace. I thank you for your attention. I wish you creative success, obedient loops and all the best. Thank you very much for the warm and pleasant words in the comments. Let's knit together.